Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Husqvarna 372 XP. Customer complaint is that it doesn't want to start, and we're also going to have to replace an anti-vibe mount on this saw. So with a running issue, we're always going to look inside the fuel tank first. Filter looks kind of old and dirty. Let's pressure test that fuel line. I'm going to put 10 pounds of pressure on here. And you can see on the gauge, it won't hold anything. There's got to be a big hole either in the fuel line or a problem with the carburetor. So let's open things up here a little bit and dig a little deeper. The air filter looks like it's brand new. You know, a lot of times when people have a no start running issue, they replace all the basic maintenance items that they probably should have been replacing all along. And then when it doesn't start, then they bring it in. That spark plug looks like it was brand new. And inside the cylinder looks nice. So we'll just spin that plug back in there. This isn't a bad looking saw. It looks like the owner takes care of it. Here's the fuel line. I'm just popping that off of the carburetor. It's stubborn. There we go. And then we'll just clean this up a little bit around here. I want to pull that fuel line out. And I just wanted to keep any dirt out of the way. So there's 3 screws on this side of the handle. I'm going to loosen them up. And then I wanted to loosen up this anti-vibe mount. But you could hear it was just spinning in there. So we're going to have to take a needle nose and grab the mount. And you'll see here in a minute what's going on. It's a big spring, and the spring broke. So what I'm trying to accomplish here is to separate the tank from the rest of the saw so that I can access the top of it where that fuel line is. So here's our anti-vibe spring. This is just the one end that's broken. It's being stubborn. And I should really have just finished removing that handle. That would have made life easier. And speaking of making things easier, we're going to remove this bar and chain. Alright, this is a locating pin. It goes through the crankcase and then into a pocket on the fuel tank. If you look at the end of the pin, it's got a... Well, that wasn't a good shot, but it's just a straight shaft. The threads don't run all the way down to the end. Now we'll finish taking our handle off of here. This box that's underneath my bench has a lot of company tools in it. So there's always coworkers grabbing stuff out of there. So let's remove the front anti-vibe spring bolt. And now our tank is loose. And we're going to separate a little bit. There is one locating bushing here that's hanging me up. We don't really get a good shot of it on the camera, but it's in there. There we go. You can see the pocket on the fuel tank that it was pushed in. So that's what's left of our anti-vibe spring. Now these springs are just turned onto a stud. And this is just a tool I made out of a piece of conduit. I cut a little groove in it. I'll push it over the spring and then I'll bend that tab that's been created. I'll bend it over a spring so that it catches the end of the coil. And then I can turn it right out of there. Now, I mean, this kind of seems a little cheesy for a dealership to be using a piece of conduit, but I have the right tool. I just made this before I had the right tool, and it's something that you can make in a pinch yourself. I just took a hacksaw and cut that spiral groove in there, and it works fine. Actually, the other end, I have a couple of notches on there that match up to the other end of the spring for reinstalling them, although they go on quite easily. So we'll just blow a little bit of this crud out of here, and then we want to remove our fuel hose. Yeah, 2 pieces. So that's why we had a big air leak when we pressurized that hose. So here's the correct tool. Here's just a hook on the end that catches the end of the spring. Yeah. And that works pretty darn good too. The one that I made is just something you can do in a pinch if you got a piece of conduit laying around. And then because of the nature of a coil spring, you can pretty easily turn them back on. You know, when you're trying to back it off, you're actually making the spring smaller and tighter. When you're twisting it on, you're expanding the spring a little bit as the friction grabs it and whatever. So here's our new fuel hose. It comes with a tapered end, so it makes it really easy to install it. And, you know, this doesn't have to be done with the tank off. I've replaced a lot of these fuel hoses without removing the tank. But we had to deal with this anti-vibe spring anyway, so. All right, now that we got the hose in there, we can reinstall this fuel tank. I'm pushing the end of the hose up through the bottom of the tray underneath the carburetor. And I just want to get that pulled through and started before I put this, before I commit to putting this all together, just so I don't have to redo it in case the hose pulls out. So I'll snip the end of the hose and then push it onto the carburetor. Looks like we got it there. So we're getting it. Now we can line the bushing back up. Just for a second there, you might have got a glimpse of that rubber bushing that's on the, goes in the pocket on the fuel tank. And if we find our screw, we can run it back through this anti-vibe mount. That one looks like it'll work. I don't really mind just throwing the screws on the bench. I kind of like puzzles, so I can figure out which one's got to go where, whatever. If you got a tray or something, you want to organize the screws better, go for it. So we're kind of hanging outside of the view of the camera right now. I know a lot of people are going to watch this video and say, you know, that's some pretty crappy camera work, whatever. But these videos are, you know, my boss just lets me hang a camera above the bench while I'm doing these repairs. I'm not even really thinking about the camera or making YouTube videos. I do think about the videos, but I don't spend any time with the camera monkeying around. He's paying me to fix chainsaws and not make videos. So I respect that, and I'm just happy he lets me do it. So we don't always get the best shots. We don't always get to zoom in on things. All right, we got our fuel filter installed, and now we're going to put the handle back on. There's going to be 5 screws. And if you ever have shorter screws, on a Husky, they almost always go in the bottom of the tank. Because that's a good shot right there. If the bottom screw went in through the tank and it was long, and then the spring flexed, you can see it might hit the bottom of the crankcase. And I've seen saws come through already with oil leaks because a long screw was installed in the bottom of the handle and it punched the bottom of that case. These are the screws I'm talking about here. So now we got our handle installed. What are we going to do next? I think we're going to start it up, see if it's going to start. So that's all I have for you on the Husqvarna 372 XP that needed a new fuel hose. And it also needed an anti-vibe mount spring. Thanks for watching. Later.